strange day in Dusty Gulch. Dusty Gulch was a town perpetually choked in its namesake. Fine, reddish grit coated everything. The clapboard buildings, the weary faces of its inhabitants, even the sparse, struggling cacti that dared to sprout on the outskirts. Today, however, a different kind of dust swirled in the air, the dust of anticipation, kicked up by nervous feet and the heavy wheels of wagons arriving from neighboring settlements. It wasn't the usual Saturday market drawing the crowds. Today was auction day. But not for livestock or land or even the prize-winning quilt Mrs. Abernathy had been working on all year. Today, the lots up for bid were people. Indentured servants, promised to the highest bidder for a year of their lives. Martha Higgins, her bonnet askew, bustled through the throng. Her voice a high-pitched trill that cut through the general din. Did you hear about Silas? Lost his farm to Grumbly again. Now he's up on the block with his daughter. Shameful, I tell you, shameful. She punctuated her pronouncements with vigorous nods, her gaze darting about, always searching for the next tidbit of gossip. A makeshift stage had been erected in the center of town, directly in front of the saloon, its normally raucous atmosphere subdued by the grim proceedings. Horace Grumbly, the town's wealthiest and most disliked man, stood beside it, a smug smirk plastered across his face. He adjusted his waistcoat, the gold watch chain gleaming in the harsh sunlight. Grumbly thrived on misfortune. It was the bedrock of his empire. Sarah Bellwether arrived late, her covered wagon a plain, unassuming vehicle that blended seamlessly with the others parked at the edge of town. She eased herself down from the driver's seat, her calico dress dusty but clean, her movements deliberate and unhurried. She was a small woman, easily overlooked, but her eyes, the color of a stormy sky, missed nothing. Martha, spotting a fresh face and one she didn't immediately recognize, scurried over. Well, hello there. You new around these parts? I'm Martha Higgins, and welcome to Dusty Gulch. She paused, her eyes narrowing slightly. You here for the auction? Sarah offered a polite smile. Yes, ma'am. I am. Looking to buy yourself some help, are you? Times are tough, that's for sure. Though some say it's hardly right selling folks off like cattle. Martha's voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper. Grumbly, of course, he's all for it. Her hands, though calloused, were well kept, and her clothes, while simple, were made of good cloth. Well, all right then. Just be careful. This ain't a place for the faint of heart. She bustled off, eager to spread her observations to the rest of the town gossips. Sarah watched her go, then turned her attention back to the stage. Grumbly had just finished his opening remarks, his voice booming across the square. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Today we have an opportunity to acquire some valuable assets. Hardworking individuals eager to earn their keep. Let the bidding begin. The first up was a young man, barely more than a boy, his face pale with fear. The bidding was slow and hesitant. Grumbly frowned, clearly displeased. Sarah moved closer to the stage, her hand instinctively reaching into the deep pocket of her skirt. Inside, nestled amongst the folds of fabric, lay a small leather pouch. A pouch filled with more money than anyone in Dusty Gulch, save perhaps Horace Grumbly, had ever seen. Money earned not from speculation or exploitation, but from years of careful saving and shrewd investment in a bakery back east. A bakery she'd sold, lock, stock, and barrel, to come west, drawn by a yearning she couldn't quite explain. A yearning that had now crystallized into a single, burning purpose. She wasn't here to observe. She was here to buy. But not just anyone. She was here to buy someone's freedom. The Miller family's plight. The sun beat down on the dusty auction block, intensifying the shame burning in Jedediah Miller's chest. He stood beside Lily, his daughter, her small hand gripping his calloused one. Her eyes, usually bright with mischief, were wide and clouded with fear as she scanned the faces in the crowd. He squeezed her hand, offering silent reassurance he wasn't sure he felt himself. He'd promised her things would be all right, but the words felt hollow even to his own ears. Jedediah hadn't always been a man on the brink. He and his late wife, Sarah, a different Sarah than the newcomer, a bitter irony, had carved a life out of the unforgiving land east of Dusty Gulch. They'd built their home with their own two hands, tilled the stubborn soil, and dreamed of a future filled with laughter and bounty. But a cruel winter, followed by a summer of relentless drought, had withered their crops and stolen their hope. Then, sickness took Sarah, leaving Jedediah alone to care for Lily and their struggling farm. He tried everything, mortgaging what little he had, working extra hours for meager wages, but it wasn't enough. The bank came calling, and with it Horace Grumbly, his eyes gleaming with avarice as he offered a solution that reeked of desperation. Jedediah refused, clinging to the land that held his memories and Sarah's resting place. But Grumbly was patient, and the debt insurmountable. Now here he was on the auction block, his freedom and Lily's about to be sold to the highest bidder. Lily tugged at his worn shirt. "Papa, will Patches be all right?" Patches was a scruffy, one-eared rabbit Lily had rescued from a snare. It was her most prized possession. Jedediah's heart twisted. He hadn't even considered what would happen to the rabbit. "We'll make sure he's looked after, Lilybug," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "Don't you worry." The auctioneer, a sweaty man with a booming voice, cleared his throat. "Now, folks, we have Jedediah Miller and his daughter, Lily. A strong, able-bodied man and a sweet, helpful girl. They're indentured for, let's say, 5 years. Where do we start?" A few tentative bids were offered, mostly from farmers looking for cheap labor. Jedediah kept his gaze fixed on the ground, shame washing over him with each offer. He felt like a broken-down plow horse, stripped of his dignity. Lily clung tighter to his hand, her knuckles white. Then Grumbly's voice cut through the air, smooth as oiled steel. $100. The other bids faltered. Everyone knew Grumbly had deep pockets and a ruthless streak. Jedediah's stomach clenched. He knew what Grumbly wanted. It wasn't his labor, it was his land. His farm sat on a valuable piece of property near the creek, land Grumbly had coveted for years. 150, a woman's voice called out. Sarah Bellwether. Jedediah risked a glance in her direction. She stood tall, her expression unreadable. Grumbly chuckled, a sound that sent shivers down Jedediah's spine. 200. He locked eyes with Jedediah, a predatory glint in his own. "I always get what I want, Miller." The bidding continued, but the tension in the air had thickened. It wasn't just about the money anymore. It was a battle of wills, a clash between greed and a desperate father's love. Jedediah watched, helpless, as his fate and Lily's hung in the balance. Sarah's unexpected bid. Sarah's gaze remained fixed on the distressing scene. Jedediah Miller, bowed by an apparent weight of years, stood rigid, a protective hand on his daughter's small frame. Lily, clutching a ragged toy rabbit named Patches, looked up at him with unwavering faith, a trust that resonated unexpectedly within Sarah's usually stoic heart. Circling them like a predator, Horace Grumbly, a man whose jowly face and calculating eyes oozed a repellent hunger, had made offers that were an insult, designed to capitalize on their desperation. The dusty air of the auction yard thrummed with a palpable tension, a gathering of scavengers preying on vulnerability. Drawn by morbid fascination and weeks of whispered rumors about the Miller family's plight, Sarah had come as a spectator. She knew Jedediah as a reserved, industrious figure who kept to himself. Lily, she remembered from glimpses in the fields, a joyous sprite whose laughter echoed like tiny bells in the summer air. Now that sound was gone, supplanted by a shadow of apprehension. A sudden surge of anger pulsed through Sarah. It wasn't mere sympathy, it was a fierce rebellion against the palpable injustice, against Grumbly's undisguised greed, against the town's collective blind eye. The auctioneer, a cadaverous man whose voice grated like a rusty gate, called for final bids. Grumbly had just upped his offer by a paltry $5. Going once, going twice. A cold dread clenched Sarah's stomach. This wasn't part of her plan. She hadn't considered anything beyond observing. But she found herself unable to remain a passive witness. $300, she declared, her voice ringing out clear and resolute, silencing the restless murmurs. A wave of astonishment rippled through the assembled crowd. Necks craned, eyes widened in disbelief. $300 was an unheard of sum, far exceeding the value of any indenture, even for two people. The auctioneer's mouth gaped. "Mrs. Bellwether?" he stammered, clearly caught off guard. Grumbly's face twisted into a mask of fury. He sputtered, "That's daylight robbery. You can't be serious." Sarah met his enraged glare, her own expression a carefully blank canvas. "I assure you, Mr. Grumbly, I am entirely serious." He began to protest, but the auctioneer, quickly regaining his professional composure, cut him off. "Do I hear another bid? $300 going once." He surveyed the crowd, but no one dared to challenge the formidable Mrs. Bellwether. "Going twice sold. To Mrs. Bellwether for $300. The gavel fell with a sharp crack that punctuated the ensuing silence. Jedediah stared at her, his features etched with stunned disbelief. Lily peeked from behind his leg, her small face a study in bewilderment and budding hope. Grumbly, scarlet with rage, stalked off, his muttered curses a low rumble in the tense atmosphere. The townsfolk buzzed with speculation, their whispers following Sarah as she approached Jedediah and Lily. "Mr. Miller," she began, her voice gentling slightly. "If you would be so kind as to accompany me, we can discuss the details of our arrangement." Jedediah remained rooted to the spot, his hand still a comforting weight on Lily's shoulder, still struggling to process the swift turn of events. Finally, he managed to speak, his voice a low tremor. "Mrs. Bellwether, I don't understand any of this." Sarah offered a small, enigmatic smile. "Perhaps, Mr. Miller," she said, "we both have a great deal yet to discover." She extended a hand to Lily. "Come along, child. Let's remove you from this dust." Lily, after a questioning glance at her father, hesitantly reached out and took Sarah's hand. Her small fingers possessed an unexpected strength. As they walked away, Jedediah following in a daze, an undercurrent of apprehension settled over the remaining crowd. What had Sarah Bellwether just done? And what did she intend to do next? A home at the bakery. Sarah's expression remained unreadable as she ushered Jedediah and Lily towards a waiting buggy, the crowd parting like the Red Sea before Moses. Whispers followed them, a sibilant hum of speculation and judgment. Jedediah, still reeling from the auction's chaotic conclusion, felt Lily's small hand tighten in his. He looked at Sarah, her jaw set, her eyes fixed on the road ahead. What was she playing at? The buggy ride was short, the silence punctuated only by the rhythmic clopping of hooves and the creak of leather. They pulled up before a building bathed in the warm glow of late afternoon sun. Bellwether's Bakery, a sign proclaimed in elegant script above a window filled with golden loaves and sugared pastries. The aroma, a comforting blend of yeast, cinnamon, and vanilla, drifted out, a stark contrast to the stale air of the auction hall. Sarah hopped down, then turned to assist Lily, her touch surprisingly gentle. "Welcome," she said, her voice softening. "Welcome to your new home." Jedediah's skepticism remained. "Ma'am, with all due respect, I don't understand. We have nothing to offer you." Sarah unlocked the bakery door, the bell above jingling merrily. "You'll see, Mr. Miller. You'll see." She led them inside, the scent of baking intensifying, wrapping around them like a warm embrace. The front of the bakery was immaculate, display cases gleaming, the floor swept clean. But Sarah didn't linger there. She led them through a doorway behind the counter into a surprisingly spacious living area. It wasn't lavish, but it was clean and comfortable. A large, worn rug covered the wooden floor, a fireplace dominated one wall, and a sturdy table sat in the center of the room. Sunlight streamed through a window, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. "This is where you'll stay," Sarah said, gesturing around. "There are 2 bedrooms upstairs. Lily can pick whichever one she likes." Lily's eyes widened, taking in the scene. "Really? We can stay here?" She looked at her father, then back at Sarah, her face a mixture of hope and disbelief. Jedediah remained cautious. "And what would you have us do in return, Miss Bellwether?" Sarah turned towards the kitchen, already bustling around. "First, you'll eat. You both look like you haven't had a decent meal in days." She pulled a loaf of freshly baked bread from a basket, sliced it thickly, and piled it high with cheese and ham. She poured 2 glasses of milk for Lily and Jedediah and a cup of coffee for herself. As Lily devoured her sandwich, crumbs dusting her cheeks, Jedediah finally allowed himself a bite. The bread was soft and flavorful, the cheese sharp and satisfying. He hadn't realized how hungry he was. "There's no need for repayment tonight," Sarah said, watching them eat. "Just rest. We can talk about arrangements in the morning." She paused, a flicker of something unreadable crossing her face. "For now, consider this a haven." Later, after Lily had been tucked into bed in a small, cozy room filled with embroidered pillows and a worn teddy bear Sarah said belonged to her niece, Jedediah found Sarah in the bakery polishing the counter with a soft cloth. The moon cast long shadows across the floor, illuminating the ghostly outlines of the baking tools. "Miss Bellwether," he began, his voice low. "I still don't understand why you did what you did. At the auction." Sarah stopped polishing, her gaze meeting his. "Sometimes, Mr. Miller," she said softly, "the reasons don't matter as much as the outcome." She turned back to her task, the cloth moving in rhythmic circles. "Get some rest. Tomorrow will be a new day." Jedediah hesitated, searching her face for a hint of her true intentions. But her expression remained inscrutable, a mask hiding the secrets within. He turned and headed towards his own room, a knot of uncertainty still tightening in his stomach. Relief warred with suspicion. He was safe. Lily was safe. But at what cost? Whispers and doubts. The dust hadn't even settled from Sarah Bellwether's carriage wheels before the whispers began, snaking through Dusty Gulch like tumbleweeds in a high wind. They gathered in the mercantile, clinging to bolts of calico and rolls of barbed wire. They buzzed in the saloon, mingling with the stale beer and cigar smoke. They even dared to brush against the freshly baked bread displayed in Sarah's own window, a bitter counterpoint to the sweet aroma. "Never seen nothing like it," croaked Old Man Hemlock, leaning heavily on his gnarled cane outside the general store. "Buyin' a man and a child? Ain't natural, I tell ya." Martha Higgins, a woman whose tongue was as sharp as her embroidery needle, overheard him. "Maybe she's got a good heart, Hemlock. Something you wouldn't know nothin' about." She adjusted her spectacles, her gaze fixed on the distant silhouette of the Bellwether Bakery. "Jedediah Miller's a good man, even if he has fallen on hard times. And that little Lily, bless her heart. Maybe someone finally saw fit to offer them a kindness." Hemlock spat a stream of tobacco juice into the dirt. "Kindness? In Dusty Gulch? Don't make me laugh, Martha. There's always a price." Inside the Golden Nugget Saloon, Horace Grumbly nursed a whiskey, his usual boisterous laughter replaced by a simmering rage. He'd envisioned Jedediah and Lily working off their debt to him, slowly but surely, their labor padding his already overflowing coffers. Sarah Bellwether had snatched that future right out of his grasping hands. He slammed his glass on the counter, drawing a few wary glances from the other patrons. A woman alone, runnin' a bakery, suddenly talkin' in a whole family? "It ain't right," he muttered to Bart, the barkeep who simply polished a glass with exaggerated care. "Maybe she just wants some company, Mr. Grumbly," Bart offered cautiously. Grumbly snorted. "Company? She could hire a dozen hands. This is something else. Something she ain't lettin' on." He swirled the amber liquid in his glass, his eyes narrowing. "I've seen that look before. Cold, calculating. Like she's planning something." He remembered the auction, Sarah's face an impassive mask as she placed her bid. He tried to outbid her, of course, fueled by spite and the desire to assert his dominance. But she'd simply raised him, her eyes never wavering, her expression unreadable. It was then, watching her, that a seed of suspicion had taken root in his mind, blossoming into a full-blown obsession. "She thinks she's so clever," he growled, more to himself than to Bart. "Comin' in here, actin' like she's better than everyone else." He took a long swig of whiskey, the burning liquid doing little to quell the fire in his belly. "Well, I'll show her. I'll find out what she's up to. And when I do..." He trailed off, a cruel smile twisting his lips. He would make her pay. He always did. Later that evening, as the moon cast long shadows across Dusty Gulch, Grumbly sat on his porch, a cheroot clenched between his teeth. He watched the faint glow emanating from the Bellwether Bakery, a beacon in the darkness. He considered his options, turning them over in his mind like stones in a riverbed. He needed information, someone on the inside, someone who could observe Sarah, listen to her conversations, uncover her secrets. His gaze drifted towards the alley behind the bakery, where a stray dog scavenged for scraps. An idea, as sharp and unwelcome as a shard of glass, pricked at his consciousness. He knew just the person. A disgruntled employee eager for a few extra dollars could prove invaluable. All it would take was a whispered word, a discreet offer, and a little bit of Grumbly's special brand of persuasion. The game, he decided, was afoot, and Sarah Bellwether wouldn't know what hit her. Cookies and repairs. The aroma of cinnamon and vanilla swirled through the bakery, chasing away the lingering scent of dust and stale bread. Lily, perched on an overturned flour sack, watched Sarah's hands dance across the counter, a blur of practiced motion as she measured, mixed, and coaxed dough into perfect rounds. "Now, the secret," Sarah said, her voice a melodic hum, "is a pinch of salt. Just a whisper." Lily mimicked Sarah, carefully measuring a minuscule amount of salt and adding it to her own small mound of dough. Her brow furrowed in concentration, her tongue peeking out from the corner of her mouth. Patches, the scruffy terrier, sat patiently at her feet, tail thumping softly against the wooden floor. "Like this?" Lily asked, holding up a lumpy ball of dough. Sarah chuckled, a warm, genuine sound that filled the bakery. "Almost perfect. Here, let me show you." She gently guided Lily's hands, smoothing the dough until it resembled a miniature version of her own. "There you go. Now roll it out." While Lily wrestled with her dough, Sarah turned her attention to the oven, adjusting the dampers with practiced ease. The heat radiated outwards, warming the room and painting their faces with a rosy glow. Outside, Jedediah surveyed the bakery roof. Missing shingles gaped like missing teeth, remnants of a recent storm. He climbed the rickety ladder, his calloused hands gripping the worn wood. The sun beat down on his back as he hammered new shingles into place, the rhythmic thud a steady counterpoint to the cheerful sounds emanating from within the bakery. Each swing of the hammer was a small act of defiance against the despair that had threatened to engulf him. He was building, repairing, providing. He paused, wiping sweat from his brow, and glanced through the bakery window. He saw Lily, her face dusted with flour, giggling at something Sarah had said. A warmth spread through his chest, a feeling he hadn't experienced in a long time. Hope. Later, the aroma of freshly baked cookies filled the air. Lily, beaming with pride, presented Jedediah with a plate piled high with her creations. Some were perfectly round, others misshapen and slightly burnt, but each one was a testament to her effort and enthusiasm. "They're wonderful, Lilybug," Jedediah said, taking a bite of a slightly charred cookie. He savored the taste, the sweetness a welcome contrast to the bitterness of the past few weeks. "Best cookies I've ever had." Sarah watched them, a subtle smile playing on her lips. "We still have a ways to go on the roof," she said, gesturing towards the ladder. "But I think we can manage a few more cookies before we head back out." Jedediah nodded, setting down his plate. "Just let me grab my hammer." He exchanged a look with Lily, a silent understanding passing between them. They were a family, not by blood, but by circumstance and a shared hope for a better future. As Jedediah climbed back onto the roof, the setting sun casting long shadows across Dusty Gulch, Lily helped Sarah clean up the bakery. She wiped flour from the counter, humming softly, her heart filled with a lightness she hadn't felt in years. Patches, sensing her joy, wagged his tail furiously, bumping against her legs. Before bed, Sarah tucked Lily in, smoothing a stray strand of hair from her forehead. "Sleep tight, Lily," she whispered. "Tomorrow we'll make something new." Lily yawned, her eyes already fluttering closed. "Good night, Sarah," she mumbled. "Thank you for the cookies." Sarah smiled, extinguishing the lamp and leaving Lily to drift off to sleep, the sweet scent of cookies lingering in the air. As she left the room, she glanced back, a flicker of something unreadable in her eyes. The tranquility of the moment was palpable, a fragile peace amidst the uncertainty that still swirled around them. Grumbly's rumors. The aroma of gingerbread still clung to the air. A sweet counterpoint to the bitter taste Horace Grumbly was brewing in Dusty Gulch. He'd watched, red-faced and sputtering, as Sarah Bellwether, with her city clothes and her knowing smile, had strolled into the auction and snatched the millers right out from under him. It wasn't just the money. It was the principle. And the humiliation. Now he leaned against the warped counter of the saloon, a perpetually sour expression etched onto his face, nursing a watered-down whiskey and spreading his particular brand of poison. Said she was doing it out of the goodness of her heart, he rasped to a cluster of townsfolk. His voice, a low growl, carried easily in the dimly lit space. "But mark my words, there's always a price." "Always?" Old Man Hemlock, his face a roadmap of wrinkles, squinted. "What price you reckonin', Horace?" Grumbly swirled the amber liquid in his glass. "Exploitation, plain and simple. That Jedediah's workin' himself to the bone, repairin' that bakery. And that little Lily, bless her heart, she's not in school, is she? No, she's slavin' away in that kitchen, learnin' to bake like a house slave." A murmur rippled through the small crowd. Jedediah Miller was well-liked, a quiet, hard-working man. And everyone knew Lily was a sweet child. "Sarah Bellwether," Grumbly continued, his voice laced with venom, "she's usin' them. Taking advantage of their desperation. Makin' a fortune off their misery disguised as charity." He paused for effect, taking a long, theatrical swig of his whiskey. "She's probably got them signed to some sort of contract where they'll be working for her for the next 20 years. Martha Hemlock, Old Man Hemlock's wife, wrung her hands. "Seems a bit far-fetched, Horace." But doubt had been planted. "Far-fetched? Is it? A woman like that, comin' out of nowhere, payin' off debts like they're nothin', it doesn't sit right." Grumbly stabbed a thick finger towards the group. "She probably has some nefarious goal for this whole town, and Jedediah and Lily are just the first piece of the puzzle." He saw the uncertainty in their eyes, the seed of suspicion taking root. He'd always been good at this, at twisting words, at preying on fears. The next day, the atmosphere in Dusty Gulch had palpably shifted. Jedediah, hammering away at a loose shingle on the bakery roof, felt it. The friendly nods were gone, replaced by sidelong glances and hushed whispers. Even Mrs. Gable, who always had a kind word and a freshly baked cookie for Lily, crossed the street to avoid them. Inside, Lily noticed it too. Fewer customers came to the bakery, and those who did seemed stiff and uncomfortable. She tried to ignore it, focusing on the feel of the dough beneath her small hands as Sarah taught her to shape it into pretzels. But the undercurrent of unease was undeniable. Sarah, ever observant, caught Lily's worried look. She straightened, wiping her hands on her apron. "Something troubling you, Lily?" Lily hesitated, then blurted out, "People, they're looking at us funny." Sarah's smile tightened just a fraction. She knew. She'd felt it too. The subtle chill in the air, the averted gazes. Grumbly was at work. "It's nothing to worry about, sweetheart," she said, her voice reassuring. "Sometimes people are just curious." But she knew it was more than curiosity. It was distrust, fueled by lies. The sweet smell of baking bread couldn't mask the stench of Grumbly's rumors seeping into the very foundation of their newfound peace. The battle for Dusty Gulch, it seemed, had only just begun. Empty shelves. The aroma of baking bread, usually a beacon calling townsfolk to Bellwether Bakery, lay stagnant, unanswered. Sarah leaned against the counter, its gleam reflecting the harsh lines bracketing her lips. Once vibrant with sourdough and rye, the shelves now stood denuded, wooden skeletons mocking her efforts. Morning's arrival brought not cheer, but a stark illumination of the dwindling patronage. Lily swept the floor with a weary sigh, the broom's whisper a somber tune against the silence that had devoured the bakery's usual hum. Avoiding Sarah's gaze, her face was a study in dejection. Even Jedediah, normally occupied with some task, was conspicuously absent, no doubt attempting to patch things up around town, both fences and feelings. "Just a slow patch," Sarah ventured, the words echoing with falseness. She fussed with the few remaining pastries, a meager display of defiance against creeping despondency. Lily paused her sweeping. "It's been like this for days, Miss Sarah, slower than winter sap." She leaned on her broom, worry etching lines on her young features. Mrs. Abernathy, who always needs your rye for her husband's midday meal, passed by without a glance. Sarah expelled a sigh, deflating like a punctured bellows. She understood. The averted eyes, the hushed conversations dissolving as she approached. Grumbly's venom was taking hold. "Maybe everyone's discovered a sudden talent for baking," Sarah suggested, a feeble attempt to conjure optimism. Lily simply resumed her sweeping, the sound a constant drone in the echoing space. The bell above the door, usually a joyful peal, remained stubbornly mute. Later, as Sarah kneaded dough, Lily slipped out. Sarah watched her go, a knot of apprehension tightening in her chest. Lily, sensitive as a tuning fork to the town's shifting moods, was clearly affected by the chill in the air. Nearly an hour later, Sarah discovered Lily behind the mercantile near a pile of discarded crates. The girl was curled inward, her shoulders trembling. "What is it, dear?" Sarah knelt beside her, her heart twisting at the sight of her distress. Lily looked up, her face slick with tears. "I overheard Mrs. Higgins and Mrs. Gable. They were talking about you." Sarah's breath caught. She braced herself. "They said you were using us, that we were just tools to make you look good so folks would buy your bread. They said you are no better than Grumbly." Lily sobbed. "They said you were exploiting us." The words, spoken aloud, hit like a blow. Sarah squeezed her eyes shut, battling the surge of anger and pain threatening to engulf her. "Oh, Lily," she murmured, drawing the girl into an embrace. "Don't listen to them. Those are just lies. Cruel, baseless lies." Lily clung to her, burying her face in Sarah's apron. "But what if they're right? What if we're ruining everything?" Sarah held her close. "You are not ruining anything, Lily. You are a gift. You and Jedediah are the finest thing to happen to me in ages. I won't let anyone, least of all that snake, Grumbly, take that away from me." Yet, even as she spoke, a shadow of doubt flickered within. The bare shelves stood as a silent indictment, a stark reminder of their tenuous hold. How long could the bakery and the millers endure if the town continued to spurn her? Glancing at Lily, face hidden in her apron, a fierce resolve ignited within her. She would fight for them even if it meant standing against the entire community. She had to. She had made a vow. Standing up to Grumbly. Dust devils danced across Dusty Gulch, mirroring the swirling unease in its inhabitants. Grit stung Jedediah's eyes as he strode toward Grumbly's mercantile, each footfall a firm declaration against the insidious whispers that had sickened the town. Enough was enough. Lily's shadowed face, etched with worry from eavesdropping at the general store, had been the final prod. The bell above the mercantile chimed his entrance, the sound dissolving into the building's vastness. The mingled sense of cured hide, exotic spices, and simmering resentment filled the air, thick as a palpable fog. Grumbly, a gnarled figure whose face resembled a topographical map of disappointment, was grudgingly dispensing sugar to Mrs. Abernathy. Jedediah waited, boots solid on the scuffed planks. Sensing the charged atmosphere, Mrs. Abernathy mumbled her gratitude and hurried out, clutching her precious ration. Grumbly finally raised his gaze, eyes narrowed to glinting chips of flint. "Miller, what brings you here? Already begging for another handout?" Jedediah's hands clenched. He moved closer, his voice a controlled rumble. "I'm here about Sarah Bellwether." A sneer contorted Grumbly's features. "Ah yes, the angel of Dusty Gulch. Or perhaps the spider, spinning webs for gullible flies." A dry, grating chuckle escaped him. "She rescued us when nobody else bothered," Jedediah countered, his tone gaining steel. "She gave us a home, a purpose. A purpose to slave away for her enrichment, more likely. Don't play innocent, Miller. She's exploiting you. Exploiting that child." Grumbly leaned forward, his voice dripping with venom. Playing the benevolent benefactor while lining her own coffers. A hot flush surged through Jedediah. He battled to maintain composure, to keep his voice even. "That's a fabrication, Grumbly. An outright lie. She's toiled harder than anyone I've seen since arriving. She's poured her heart and soul into this town, and all you've done is spread poison." "Spread poison?" Grumbly scoffed, a derisive snort. "I'm merely stating facts, truths too uncomfortable for others to utter. She breezes in, purchases you at auction like chattel, and suddenly everyone forgets she's an outsider, a woman shrouded in secrecy." "Secrecy?" Jedediah challenged, his gaze unwavering. "What secrets? That she's compassionate? That she's empathetic? That she genuinely desires to assist others? Don't be naive, Miller. Self-interest is a universal language. Mark my words, you'll rue the day you trusted her." Grumbly's gaze darted towards the entrance, a flicker of anticipation in his eyes. Jedediah advanced, his voice a low growl. "I trust her more than anyone I've encountered in years. She's provided Lily with a future, a family. A concept foreign to someone like you." He paused, inhaling deeply. "You've been peddling falsehoods, turning this town against her. You've been attempting to destroy her, and you've wounded Lily in the process. I refuse to tolerate it any longer." Grumbly's eyes became mere slits. "And what do you intend to do about it, Miller? You and what army stands behind you?" Jedediah straightened, his shoulders braced. "I'm going to speak the truth. To anyone within earshot. I'm going to recount the story of the woman who saved us, the woman who labors tirelessly to sustain her bakery, the woman who cherishes Lily as her own." He paused, his voice resonating with resolve. "And I'm going to expose the spiteful old man who's attempting to dismantle her out of pure malice." He turned, exiting the mercantile, the bell's chime echoing behind him. He didn't glance back. He understood the struggle was far from concluded, but for the first time in what felt like an age, a spark of hope flickered within Jedediah. He had voiced his conviction, and that was a beginning. He had defended Sarah's honor, thereby defending his own dignity. His next task was to persuade the rest of Dusty Gulch to perceive the truth. The challenge. The general store now felt like a confined space, the air dense with the mingled smells of preserved goods and aging wood. Jedediah held his ground, the aroma of dried legumes and sugary residue doing little to calm the knot in his gut. Grumbly, propped against a flour barrel, sneered. "So, Miller," he drawled, the name dripping with disdain, "you're so convinced Miss Bellwether's an angel fallen from somewhere beyond this dust bowl. You'd stake everything on it." Jedediah's jaw hardened. "I'm willing to bet you're dead wrong about her," he countered, each syllable measured. He wouldn't be goaded into recklessness. Grumbly emitted a grating chuckle. "Wrong? The woman's clearly plotting something. But you, Miller, you're blinded by her kindness." He straightened, a predatory gleam in his eyes. "Let's make this a genuine test, then. A test of nerve. A contest of speed." He paused, allowing the tension to thicken. "A race. Horseback, of course. The victor claims it all." Jedediah's brow furrowed. "A race? What exactly are you proposing?" "Simple," Grumbly declared, gesturing expansively. "I'll wager my entire spread, every acre, every head of livestock, against your everything. The bakery, the land, down to the last nail in your house." A collective gasp swept through the onlookers, drawn in by the mounting drama. A chill snaked its way up Jedediah's spine. He risked a glance at the doorway, picturing Lily, her innocent eyes wide with alarm. He couldn't gamble her future. He simply wouldn't. "You're insane," Jedediah spat, his voice a low growl. I won't risk Lily's security on some fool's errand. Grumbly's grin widened, revealing yellowed teeth. Ah, so you concede your faith in your angel is less than absolute? Perhaps you're less eager to champion her cause when it means risking something tangible. He knew exactly how to wound him. The air vibrated with hostility. Jedediah felt cornered. To decline would be to affirm Grumbly's slander, to betray weakness to the town. It would embolden Grumbly to escalate his attacks on Sarah and inevitably on Lily. He envisioned Sarah's quiet dignity, the gentle way she regarded Lily, the spark of hope she'd kindled in Dusty Gulch. He pictured the bakery, modest but essential, the warm, yeasty scent, a promise of better days. He thought of Lily, her infectious laughter filling their humble abode. He couldn't allow Grumbly to steal that. What are the conditions? Jedediah asked, his tone devoid of emotion. Grumbly's eyes glittered with triumph. Sunrise. From the creek bed at the town's edge to Widow Hawthorne's ancient oak and back. The first to cross the creek claims victory. A ripple of murmurs spread through the crowd. Widow Hawthorne's oak was a considerable distance, a punishing trek even for experienced riders. Jedediah inhaled deeply. And if I prevail, you leave Sarah Bellwether alone. You cease your lies and leave her in peace. Grumbly hesitated, then nodded curtly. Agreed. Win or lose, Miller, this marks the end for you and your savior. No recriminations, no complaints. Just silence. Jedediah thrust out his hand. Then it's a deal. Grumbly's grip was surprisingly firm. Sunrise, Miller. Don't disappoint. Jedediah turned and exited the store, the weight of his choice heavy on his shoulders. The townsfolk's faces swam before him, a blend of curiosity and worry. He had a daunting task ahead before dawn. He needed to find Sarah. And he could only pray that Old Bess held one last burst of speed within her. The sinking sun stretched long shadows across Dusty Gulch as news of the challenge flew like dust devils. By nightfall, the entire town seethed with anticipation. Carriages and horses lined the gritty path toward the creek bed. Lanterns danced, painting ghostly light upon the expectant faces of the assembled masses. The air hummed with suspense, a morbid fascination clinging to the night. Patches to the rescue. The familiar, comforting scent of baking bread usually embraced Lily, but the bakery felt suffocating today, thick with unease. Since Jedediah's clash with Grumbly at the general store, a subtle shift had rippled through the town. Smiles seemed painted on, greetings clipped, and whispers, though hushed, vibrated with disapproval. Lily worked the sourdough, her fingers mirroring Sarah's experienced motions, her thoughts consumed by the impending race between her pa and Grumbly. Jedediah had revealed little, his jaw tight, his eyes holding a deep weariness. Sarah's entreaties to reconsider, her voice full of worry, had been met with a steely resolve Lily hadn't witnessed in years. Peeking through the window, she noticed the usual morning liveliness absent. A few wagons rolled past, occupants pointedly averting their gaze. Even Mrs. Higgins, a regular for sugar cookies, was missing. A knot tightened in Lily's stomach. Sarah, she murmured almost inaudibly, no one's coming. Sarah exhaled, pushing flour-dusted strands from her face. They're just wary Lilybug. They'll be back. But Lily harbored doubts. She understood Grumbly's manipulative nature, his talent for spreading discord. Her pa was a good man, Sarah a saint. They didn't deserve this ostracization. A daring, perhaps foolish, idea sparked in Lily's mind. She couldn't idly stand by and watch everything collapse. Later, when Sarah went to replenish their water supply, Lily quietly slipped out. Patches, her steadfast pony, grazed contentedly in the corral behind the bakery. He perked up, his ears swiveling, offering a soft greeting as she approached. Hey, fella, Lily whispered, stroking his soft nose. Got a very important mission for you. Patches seemed to understand, nudging her hand. Though small, barely reaching her shoulder, he was robust and even-tempered, a loyal companion on countless explorations of the surrounding countryside. Everyone believed the race hinged on speed. But what if another quality reigned supreme? The course was notoriously unforgiving, riddled with sharp stones and sudden drops. Perhaps Patch's sturdy frame and calm disposition would prove advantageous. Lily's pulse quickened as she led Patches to the small shed containing Jedediah's equipment. She chose a light saddle and bridle with care, anxious not to burden him. She brushed his coat until it gleamed like polished mahogany, braiding bright ribbons into his mane and tail, a silent plea for good fortune. This was a secret she couldn't divulge, not even to Sarah. Her pa would be furious, but by then, it would be too late. The contest would be underway. The hurdle was registering Patches. The race was the next day, the list kept at the general store. Lily bided her time until dusk when the store emptied and shadows stretched long. Heart pounding in her chest, she approached Mr. Abernathy behind the counter who was meticulously cleaning his spectacles. "Mr. Abernathy," she began, her voice shaky. "I want to enroll a horse for the race." He peered down at her. "Now, Lily? Your pa already entered Buster, his stallion. Fine specimen." "It's not for pa," Lily clarified, swallowing hard. It's for me. I want to enter Patches." Mr. Abernathy chuckled, a deep, resonant sound. "Patches? Your little pony?" "Lily, I admire your spirit, but this isn't a pony race." "Please, Mr. Abernathy," Lily implored, tears pricking her eyes. Just put his name on the list. I have the fee." She presented a fistful of coins accumulated over weeks of diligent saving. Mr. Abernathy hesitated, then relented with a sigh. "All right, Lily. But don't say I didn't caution you." He added Patch's name to the list in small letters, a barely noticeable addition among the names of larger, more powerful steeds. Leading Patches away from the store, Lily experienced a rush of both excitement and dread. She had done it. Patches was entered. Now she only had to conceal it from Jedediah and, somehow, miraculously, emerge victorious. The race. Dust devils danced around Lily's worn boots as she guided Patches to the starting line. The air vibrated with an electric tension that sharply contrasted the chilly reception and downcast gazes she'd met at the bakery all week. Nearby, Jedediah's face was a canvas of worry and disbelief. He'd offered little more than a drawn-out sigh and a weary shake of his head upon learning of Lily's audacious entry. Still, she knew he wouldn't truly try to dissuade her. Towering over Patches were the other contestants, magnificent, well-bred racers. Their jockeys, mostly Grumbly's lackeys, smirked with contempt. Horace Grumbly himself, astride a gleaming obsidian stallion, sneered. Well, little Lily," he boomed, his voice cutting through the mounting excitement. "Decided to let your little mule stretch her legs? Perhaps the child needs a nap instead." Lily's throat tightened, her grip on Patches's reins firm. "She's capable, Mr. Grumbly." The starting pistol cracked. A wave of sound washed over the field. The horses exploded forward, a muscular torrent. Lily, clinging tight, found herself mired near the rear. The thoroughbred's powerful strides ate up the track with ease. Patches, normally so even-tempered, seemed unsettled by the pandemonium, her gait uneven. Jedediah, his gut clenched, observed from the sidelines. He noticed Grumbly's stable hand, a scrawny fellow named Silas, deliberately veer into Sarah's path, forcing her mount toward the track's edge. Silas then turned his attention to Patches, skillfully maneuvering to hem her in. Grumbly's strategy was clear: utter domination and the public humiliation of the Millers. Panic threatened to overwhelm Lily. Silas's horse was a wall, throwing up stinging clouds of dust. Above the roar of the crowd, she could hear Grumbly's mocking laughter. Desperation, a bitter taste on her tongue, rose within her. Leaning low, she whispered urgently into Patches's ear, "We have to move, girl. We have to." As if understanding, Patches responded. A soft nicker resonated from her, her ears pricked forward. Rather than raw speed, she surged ahead with a resolute, gathering strength. Silas's horse, caught off guard by the pony's sudden resolve, faltered momentarily, creating a sliver of an opening. Lily didn't hesitate. She urged Patches forward, weaving through the throng with unexpected grace. A collective gasp rippled through the onlookers as the small pony began to close the distance. Grumbly's sneer dissolved. Rounding the final bend, Patches ran neck and neck with Grumbly's prized stallion. The crowd was a frenzy of motion, a roaring sea of voices. Jedediah, his face a study in disbelief, roared Lily's name. Grumbly, his features twisted with fury, savagely struck his stallion with the riding crop. The powerful horse surged, but Patches, fueled by a sudden surge of sheer will, dug her hooves into the dirt, refusing to yield. The finish line beckoned. Lily crouched low, urging Patches onward with every fiber of her being. The small pony stretched, nostrils flaring, every muscle straining. A heartbeat later, Patches crossed the line. Silence fell, broken only by Lily's gasping breaths and Patches's labored panting. Then the dam burst. A tidal wave of cheering erupted, louder than anything before. People shouted, applauded, and stamped their feet with unrestrained joy. Lily, tears coursing down her cheeks, embraced Patches fiercely. Jedediah hurried to her, sweeping her from the saddle. Wordlessly, he simply held her close. Grumbly remained frozen atop his stallion, his face a mask of apoplectic rage. He opened his mouth, poised to unleash a torrent of protest, but the crowd's joyous uproar silenced him. Patches, the little pony from the struggling farm, was the victor. A kinder Dusty Gulch. The dust hadn't settled from Patches's victory gallop before the shift began. Not a chorus of disbelief, but a low hum of contrition. Regret for their hasty condemnations for so readily swallowing Horace Grumbly's spiteful pronouncements. The sight of Horace's overturned table at the finish, the frantic scramble to conceal his loaded dice, was the catalyst. Even Grumbly's staunchest allies couldn't dismiss what they'd witnessed, attempted fraud against a child. And the motive? Sarah Bellwether. Behind the bakery counter, Lily registered the alteration first. Not a sudden influx, but a gradual swell of customers. Faces previously set in frowns now offered hesitant smiles. Instead of grumbling about that Bellwether woman, they inquired about Sarah's well-being, suggesting treatments for her lingering cough. Martha Higgins, known more for her parsimony than generosity, purchased a dozen sugar cookies, meticulously placing each in wax paper. For Miss Bellwether, she said, her voice uncharacteristically gentle for her throat. Ginger and honey are soothing, you understand. Jedediah, typically a man of few words, found himself drawn into genuine conversations. Men who had once ignored him now clapped him on the back, congratulating him on Patch's win. They praised the pony's surprising agility, her unexpected elegance. Beneath the surface ran an undercurrent of atonement. He spotted Horace Grumbly only once that day, slinking down Main Street, his shoulders bowed, his once commanding voice reduced to a muttered lament. People steered clear, crossing the thoroughfare or turning away. The general store, typically buzzing with Grumbly's bluster, possessed an unusual stillness. The following morning, anxiety still gnawing at his stomach, Jedediah rose before the sun. He slipped out to the barn where Patches, already alert, greeted him with a gentle nudge. He stroked her velvety nose, a silent expression of gratitude for her efforts. Inside, Lily, humming a cheerful tune, was already kneading dough. The warm, comforting scent of yeast and cinnamon filled the air, dispelling the last of Jedediah's unease. He watched her for a moment, sunlight illuminating the gold in her hair, and felt a profound sense of thankfulness. He had her, and miraculously, they had Sarah. That day, the bakery experienced a phenomenon. A queue snaked down the block, people patiently awaiting service. They bought bread, pies, cookies, every item Sarah had crafted. They left lavish tips, pressing extra coins into Lily's palm with bashful grins. For Patches, one man winked. To help Miss Bellwether recover, another declared. Even old Mr. Abernathy, the town's notorious skinflint, bought a whole apple pie, declaring it the best damn pie he'd eaten in years. As Lily tallied the day's receipts, her eyes widened in astonishment. It was more money than they'd seen in months, enough to settle their debts with funds to spare. She looked at Jedediah, her face alight with joy. "We did it, Papa," she breathed. "We actually did it." As dusk settled over Dusty Gulch, casting elongated shadows, a gathering of townsfolk assembled outside Sarah's bakery. Lanterns in hand, they cast a welcoming light upon the building. Jedediah, Lily, and Sarah stood on the porch, observing their approach. Martha Higgins stepped forward, holding a painstakingly crafted quilt. "Miss Bellwether," she announced, her voice steady and clear, "we wish to present you with this. A symbol of our appreciation." One by one, the others came forward, bearing gifts. A basket brimming with fresh eggs, a jar of homemade preserve, a posy of wildflowers. Words of apology and support were offered, each sentiment imbued with heartfelt regret. Tears welling in her eyes, Sarah could only manage a whispered, "Thank you." Jedediah embraced her, drawing her close. He surveyed the throng, his heart overflowing. He witnessed kindness, empathy, and a spirit of forgiveness. He saw a community finally whole. For the first time since arriving in Dusty Gulch, Sarah knew a sense of belonging. Gazing at Jedediah and Lily, her newfound family, she knew they would face whatever challenges lay ahead together. Dusty Gulch was transforming. Perhaps, just perhaps, it was blossoming into a more benevolent place. And Sarah, Jedediah, and Lily were at its very core.